The alarms were already screaming when Hale opened his eyes. For a moment he didn't know where he was. Smoke filled the corridor. The floor shook under him. Someone was shouting orders in a language he couldn't understand. His right shoulder throbbed like he'd been punched by a starship. Then he remembered. He was on 9, the royal flagship of the Empire. A human volunteer assigned as temporary escort, nothing special, just a diplomatic formality. He wasn't meant to see combat. He wasn't meant to be anywhere near danger. Yet danger had found him anyway. And somewhere on this ship was the person he was responsible for, Princess Lyra, heir to a throne that commanded 5 galaxies. Pushed himself up, coughing hard. The lights flickered above him in panicked bursts. The air smelled of burning metal and plasma discharge. He could hear distant booms, impact after impact, like something massive was tearing the hull apart. But that wasn't the part that made his skin go cold. The part that terrified him was the silence right after the booms, the kind of silence that meant something was watching, waiting. He reached for his communicator. "Princess, Lyra, do you copy? I'm..." A blast shook the ship again, knocking him into the opposite wall. He froze, because he heard something. A voice, soft, strained. Her voice. He ran. He didn't think. He didn't look for help. He didn't care that he was just a human guard in a foreign empire that barely respected his species. All he knew was that she had called his name, and she never did that unless things were truly bad. The corridor bent left, then down a staircase where half the steps had melted. Sparks rained from a shredded ceiling panel. Strange violet blood, definitely not human, smeared across the wall. The attackers had been here. Sahart hammered. He didn't know who they were. Pirates? Rebels? Something worse. They were secretive, always dancing around politics. But whatever boarded the ship wasn't playing political games. They were destroying everything. He skidded around the last corner to the royal chamber. And froze. The massive door had been torn open from the outside. Not blasted. Ripped. Something had clawed its way in. Swallowed hard and slipped inside. The chamber was wrecked. Shattered glass glittered across the floor like scattered stars. Part of the ceiling had collapsed. Hover lanterns flickered weakly, throwing broken shadows everywhere. And in the center of the room, kneeling beside a half-sparking console, was Princess Lyra. She looked up when she heard him. Her pale silver skin glowed faintly, even in the chaos. Her royal armor, usually pristine, was scratched and dented. Her eyes, luminous and storm blue, widened with relief when she saw him. She whispered, You came back." "As if I'd leave you," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. She tried to stand but stumbled, rushed forward and caught her before she hit the ground. Her breath trembled. She wasn't badly hurt, but she was drained, physically and emotionally. And he understood why, when he saw what she had been guarding with her body. A small device lay behind her, smooth, silver, glowing with a rhythmic pulse. Like a heartbeat. "What is that?" asked. Lyra hesitated. He never seen her hesitate before. "It's the key of," she said quietly. "If the attackers take it, they can override shields across the sector. It can collapse entire planets." He felt a chill crawl up his spine. "Okay," he said softly, "so we protect it." She stared at him for a long moment. Something in her expression softened, almost painfully, as if she wanted to say more but couldn't. Suddenly, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the room. Froze, so did she. Then, thud, a heavy footstep, somewhere behind them. Lyra's hand gripped his arm, hard. She whispered, "We're not alone." Another footstep echoed, louder, closer. Shifted his stance, instinct kicking in. Humans didn't have claws, psychic vision, or starborn strength like most warriors, but humans did have one thing. They didn't run. "Get behind me," he said quietly. Lyra's breath hitched. "But you're..." "I said behind me." A low growl echoed through the chamber. Metal scraped against metal. Then from the far shadows, something emerged. Huge, armored, eyes burning like molten iron. Its silhouette was all wrong, like something born for war and nothing else. Lyra gasped. Didn't move. He didn't care that he was a human, fragile bones and all. He didn't care that he stood between a princess and a monster built for killing. He only cared about one thing. If this creature wanted her, it would have to go through him first. The creature stepped fully into the broken chamber and finally saw its shape. It wasn't a rebel soldier. It wasn't a pirate. It wasn't anything he recognized. Its armor looked grown, not built, layered bone fused with black steel. Thick claws scraped the floor with every step. Its body hummed with some type of internal energy like it fed on fear or heat or both. And its face. There was no face. Just a mask of jagged plating with two molten orange eyes carved into it. Lyra's fingers tightened on sleeve. Oh, she breathed. She sounded terrified. He'd never heard her terrified. What the hell is a? Asked without taking his eyes off it. A species created during the forbidden experiments of the Outer Rift, she whispered. They were erased centuries ago. They're not supposed to exist. This thing shouldn't be real. It growled again, vibrating through the air like a beast smelling its prey. Took one step forward anyway. You need to get out, he murmured to Lyra. Her breath hitched. No, I won't leave you. This isn't optional. The creature lunged, shoved Lyra aside and rolled. A claw tore through the floor where he'd been standing a second earlier. Shards of metal exploded in all directions. He didn't have time to think. He reached for the first thing he could grab, a broken support pipe half buried in debris. He swung. The metal cracked against the creature's armor. The pipe bent badly. Oh, come on, muttered. The roared and backhanded him across the room. Slammed into the wall, gasping as pain exploded through his ribs. The world dimmed. He tasted blood. But through the blur he saw Lyra scrambling to reach him, her eyes wide with horror. He tried to lift a hand to stop her. Too late. There was already between them. Lyra froze. The creature towered over her, its molten eyes reflecting the trembling blue glow of her skin. She reached back instinctively, trying to shield the key of behind her, but that only made the creature's growl deepen. It knew what she was guarding. It wanted it, and it was about to take it. Forced himself to move. His vision doubled, but he locked onto the monster's exposed lower leg, a joint between two armor plates, one weak point, the only one he saw. He grabbed a sharp shard of wreckage and pushed off the wall with all his strength. The shard drove deep. The shrieked an awful grating sound that rattled the chamber. It spun, slashing wildly, and barely threw himself clear in time. Lyra darted to his side, catching him before he fell. Why would you? Because, he wheezed, you're a princess, and I'm apparently an idiot. The joke broke something in her. A trembling laugh escaped her, half a sob, half relief. For a moment their faces were inches apart. Her hand rested against his chest, feeling his heartbeat. His breath warmed her cheek. Then the creature roared again. It wasn't wounded enough. It wasn't slowing. If anything, it was even angrier. Lyra swallowed. We can't fight that, not like this. So run. No, you'll die. Wiped blood from his lip and managed a crooked grin. Not planning to. She stared at him. The ship shook violently as another impact rocked the hull. Whoever was attacking, they had reinforcements. Lyra looked toward the corridor. The escape pods, if we reach them, we can send a signal for help. Then go, said again. She shook her head fiercely. I'm not leaving without you. But the chamber ceiling creaked. A massive fracture split across the top. Debris rained down. The turned toward the sound, then toward the princess. It crouched, ready to leap. His heart dropped. There was no time left. No plan. No backup. Only one thing he could do. He grabbed the princess. pulled her into the corridor, and slammed his hand against the emergency door control. The heavy blast door slid shut, sealing her on the other side. Her eyes widened in shock. "No, open IT." He leaned his forehead against the sealed door, breathing hard. "You'll make it to the pods, just run." Please." Behind him, the beast's shadow grew across the ruined chamber floor. He didn't turn around. He didn't need to. Because he already knew. He wasn't surviving this room. But she would. She had to. "Lyra," he whispered through the door, voice shaking, "I'm human. We do stupid, heroic things. It's kind of our brand." Then the creature charged and turned to face it. His hands were trembling, but he gripped the jagged piece of metal like it was the only thing keeping the universe from collapsing. The roared, a sound that split metal and shook his bones. Its molten eyes locked onto him, scanning, calculating, predatory. It was bigger, stronger, faster, and yet it paused, just for a heartbeat. Maybe it sensed something different in him. Or maybe it was human stubbornness. Didn't have time to think. The ceiling above him groaned. Chunks of metal and insulation fell like rain. Sparks danced across the floor. Every sense screamed, run, hide, die. But didn't run. He thought of Lyra, her storm-blue eyes, the way her hand had rested on his chest in that fleeting, terrifyingly intimate moment. Her voice, whispering his name, trusting him to protect her. She was the galaxy's hope, the key of was her legacy, and she could not die. The lunged, pivoted, swinging the jagged shard toward its leg again. The creature howled, swiping at him with claws that could slice through titanium. Ducked just in time. Sparks flew as metal screeched against metal. The shard slipped from his hand. He was exposed. This claws swung toward him again, fast, merciless, unstoppable. And in that moment made a decision. He stepped forward. No hesitation, no thought for himself, only one goal: buy Lyra time. The creature's claw descended. Threw himself at it. Pain exploded instantly. Fire, ice. His body slammed into the wall, his ribs cracked, blood spattered his face. This claw had grazed him, but more importantly, it had missed Lyra. Lyra's scream tore through the corridor. Looked up, saw her pressed against the door, hands shaking, eyes wide in terror. She cried. He forced a grin through the pain. "Go now, please." Lyra hesitated, her hand pressed against the control panel. I can't leave you." "Yes, you can," he coughed, blood spilling over his lips. "Humans were stubborn, but smart enough to survive. Run." She obeyed, tears streamed down her face, her voice cracked. I'll come back for you, I swear it." Didn't answer, though was already turning back toward him, sensing his weakened state. Every muscle screamed to flee. Every nerve begged him to retreat, but he couldn't. She was already gone, behind that reinforced blast door, just moments from the escape pods. The creature's claws lashed at him again. He dove to the side, rolling across shards of metal and broken flooring. Pain shot through every limb, his vision blurred. He could hear Lyra shouting from the other side of the door, "Don't." And in that instant, he realized the truth. He didn't care if he lived. All that mattered was that she survived, that she reached the pods, that the key of didn't fall into the wrong hands. A massive claw swung down toward him. Braced, his arms shot up instinctively. He didn't dodge. The claw struck him squarely across the chest. His world turned white. Pain engulfed him like a black star collapsing in on itself. The air rushed out of his lungs. Every bone felt like it shattered. But somehow, against all odds, he stayed standing barely. He stumbled backward, the paused, tilting its head. It had expected him to collapse, expected a scream, expected a flinch. But hale, fragile human that he was, did neither. He raised his bloodied hand, trembling but resolute, and grinned. "You want the princess?" he rasped. "You'll have to go through me first." The roared, charging again, but steadied himself. He wasn't just a human, he was determined. That determination radiated like a shockwave through the chamber. The creature hesitated, just a fraction of a second. That was all needed. He kicked, he jabbed, he dodged, using every ounce of human cunning and sheer stubbornness. Pain screamed through him with every movement, but he kept moving. Every second he survived was 1 second Lyra had to escape. The chamber shook, sparks rained, metal groaned. The battle had become more than survival, it had become a statement. The human guard was defying death itself. And for the first time, this seemed uncertain. Lyra's voice came through the door again, trembling but determined. "You have to hold on, help is coming." Gritted his teeth, help, she believed it, that was enough. That belief alone made him stronger. He squared his shoulders, blood dripped from his face and chest, his legs burned, every breath was fire. And yet he would not fall. Because someone had to protect the princess. Because humans, fragile, mortal, ordinary humans, could do extraordinary things. Because he would take the hit so that she could live. His legs trembled, but he forced himself upright. Pain radiated through every inch of his body, ribs cracked, shoulder dislocated, blood dripping from a dozen wounds. The loomed above him, massive, terrifying, yet somehow cautious. Stubbornness had made it hesitate. Behind the reinforced blast door, Lyra struggled with the escape pod controls. Her hands shook violently, fingers slipping over buttons. Sweat dripped from her silver brow, mixing with tears. She glanced at the door, praying the human she had come to trust could survive another second. Roared not in pain, but in sheer defiance. He grabbed a jagged piece of metal from the floor. It was a pitiful weapon against a creature like this, yet he swung it with every ounce of will he had left. The metal screeched against the armored legs. Sparks flew, blinding him briefly. The creature recoiled, surprised by the human's audacity. It swung again and rolled just in time. Pain exploded in his side. He spat blood. Focus, he thought. Just one more second, one more hit, she has to get out. In the chaos, the ship's emergency systems flared. Red lights pulsed in sync with alarms. The hull groaned under the relentless attacks of the enemy ships outside. Every second was a countdown, every heartbeat a drum of impending doom. Through the tiny viewport of the blast door, he saw Lyra finally manage to open the escape pod bay. The pods hummed and powered up. Light filled the corridor. Hope surged. But this attention snapped back to him. Its molten eyes glowed brighter, fury simmering. It lunged with terrifying speed, braced himself. He could almost hear Lyra shouting through the door, "You can't hold it forever." "I don't need forever," he gasped. "Just long enough." The creature's claw came down in a violent arc, twisted, barely avoiding it, and slammed the shard of metal into its joint again. This time it made contact. A loud, metallic snap echoed through the chamber. The creature hissed in pain, staggering. Seized the moment, he kicked forward, using every bit of human ingenuity, leverage, and stubbornness he could muster. The stumbled back, clawed at the floor in frustration. "That's it, hold it, hold it." Suddenly the ship shuddered violently. One of the enemy boarding vessels had exploded nearby. The blast rocked the hull, sending skidding across the chamber floor. Pain seared through him like fire, but he forced himself to stay upright. He could see the escape pod's lights reflecting on the sealed door. Lyra's silhouette was visible, trembling, but moving. She was going. And then something unexpected happened. A squad of reinforcements burst into the corridor adjacent to the chamber, energy rifles blazing. The turned its molten gaze toward them, momentarily distracted. His chest heaved with exhaustion and pain, but relief surged. Help had arrived. Lyra shouted, "Hurry, get in the pods." "I'm fine," coughed, blood dripping from his lips. "Just go." She hesitated, eyes wide, but finally obeyed. Her small figure slipped into the pod. The hatch sealed with a hiss. His heart hammered. He could see her, safe for now. The roared, spinning back toward him. Barely standing, raised his arms. "You want me?" he rasped. "Come get me." The creature lunged, braced himself, prepared to absorb the full impact. Pain, fear, death, all would come, but he didn't flinch. Humans were fragile, yes, but human will, human determination, that was something else, something that couldn't understand. The first strike hit him square in the chest. He screamed, pain burning through his body like molten steel. Bones shattered, air left his lungs, but he stayed on his feet, staggering, defiant. The swung again, twisted, grabbed a shard of fallen metal and jabbed with every ounce of strength remaining. Sparks flew. The creature shrieked, unaccustomed to resistance from such a small, fragile opponent. Lyra's voice echoed faintly through the blast door. He gritted his teeth. She's alive, that's what matters, she's alive. The creature paused, scanning him. It had never expected a human to endure such punishment, such unyielding stubbornness. Its molten eyes narrowed. It tilted its massive head. Bloodied and broken, managed a weak smile. "You don't know humans," he whispered. "We fight for each other." The creature roared, frustrated. It lunged again and braced himself. Because he knew, whatever happened next, he had already won in one way. The princess would live. Could barely stand. Every breath was a firestorm in his lungs. Every movement sent shudders of agony through his fractured ribs, sprained ankle, and torn shoulder. Yet his eyes never left the creature, massive and merciless, circled him like a predator savoring the kill. He knew he was a fragile human. Compared to this thing, he might as well have been a child with a stick. But humans had something no monster, no alien, no weapon could replicate: sheer, relentless will. Behind the blast door, Lyra's escape pod had launched. She was alive, moving toward safety, but she didn't know if he would follow. Her voice cut through the corridor speakers. "Please don't die." He gritted his teeth, blood dripping down his chin. "No promises," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "But if I have to, I'll make sure she lives." The roared and charged again, faster this time. Stumbled backward, barely keeping his footing. The shards of metal he had been using were gone, splintered to useless fragments. His hands shook, his vision blurred. He could feel the pull of mortality tugging at him. Pain screamed in every joint, every muscle, every broken bone. And yet he didn't give up. Humans could endure, humans could adapt, humans could fight when it seemed impossible. Lunged toward a dangling piece of overhead conduit. With all his remaining strength, he yanked it down. Sparks flew as it collided with this armored shell. The creature hissed in fury, clawing at the hazard as scrambled backward, bloodied but alive. He heard the emergency sirens wailing, the distant sounds of battle raging across the ship. Explosions shook the walls. Reinforcements were arriving, but they hadn't made it here yet. His body screamed to collapse, but his mind was clear. One goal, one mission. She survives. The lunged again. This time and fell to the ground deliberately, rolling under its massive frame. He scrambled to his feet, grabbed a jagged piece of pipe, and swung with all the strength his broken body could muster. The pipe caught the creature across its lower armor plate. Sparks flew. The shrieked, staggering backward. Seized the opening. He ran, dragging himself across the scorched floor toward the chamber door. The creature recovered instantly, claws swiping, the air vibrating with each strike. He was human, fragile, ordinary, but he refused to die for nothing. A flash of memory hit him, Lyra, trembling in the corridor moments ago, looking at him with those storm-blue eyes. She had trusted him. She had believed in him, and for the first time he realized it wasn't just duty. It was something far deeper. Love. Not the soft, easy kind, not the polite gestures or whispered promises. This was raw, fiery, terrifying. Love that gave a man the courage to stand in front of death itself and say, "Not today, not her, not now." He kicked the squarely in its armored leg, staggering it again. Pain lanced through his own body, but adrenaline fueled him. Then the ship shuddered violently. A massive explosion rocked the chamber. The roared in frustration. Something hit it, reinforcements had arrived. Warriors with plasma rifles, energy swords, and fierce determination poured in from the side corridor. The creature turned toward them, momentarily distracted, gasped for air, chest heaving. Blood soaked his uniform. His shoulder hung at a strange angle, ribs throbbed, ankle screamed. He should have collapsed. But he didn't. He straightened, bloodied and battered, and raised his gaze. The had faltered. It hadn't expected a human to endure so much, to stand so defiant, to fight not for glory, not for power, but for someone else. Whispered through clenched teeth, I'm just a human, fragile, mortal, ordinary, but humans fight, and we protect those who cannot fight for themselves. The hesitated, sensing the difference. Its molten eyes flickered with frustration, confusion. It roared again, louder, angrier, more violent than ever, but stood firm, even as his knees shook and blood poured freely. From the corner of his eye, he saw Lyra's pod vanish into the stars. She was safe, alive, free. And for a human, that was worth every shattered bone, every piercing pain, every breath of agony. Hale, ordinary human, ordinary soldier, had done the impossible. And yet he knew the battle wasn't over. Not entirely. There was still there, still alive, still dangerous. But smiled, blood dripping from his lips. Humans didn't always survive. But humans always fought. The loomed over, massive, relentless, a creature born for destruction. Its molten eyes burned like twin suns in the dim chamber. Every inch of his body screamed in protest. Ribs shattered, blood spilling from his mouth, shoulder twisted, ankle broken, yet somehow he was still standing. He should have fallen. Any normal human would have. Any normal human would have screamed, begged for mercy, or simply crumpled. But Hale wasn't normal. Humans had a strange way of surviving impossible odds, a stubbornness born of necessity, a courage forged in the quiet moments no one saw, and battered, bleeding, and utterly exhausted, drew on that very thing now. He squared his shoulders, gripping the jagged piece of metal he'd dragged across the floor. Sparks flickered from the walls, casting fractured shadows across the chamber. Every second felt stretched thin, one wrong move and he'd be gone. But he had no fear, only purpose. Behind the blast door, somewhere deep in the ship, Lyra's pod glimmered as it sped toward the stars. She was alive, safe, that was all that mattered. The lunged again, rolled to the side, slamming his body against a column to avoid the full force of the attack. Pain screamed in his ribs, but he forced himself up. The creature swung again, claws tearing through metal like it was paper. Jabbed with the shard of metal, sparks erupting, striking the weak joint in its armor. The creature roared, staggering. It had not expected such resilience from a human. Its massive frame twisted and lunged again. Dove forward, rolling under its claws, then leapt, slamming the shard into its chest plate. It howled, a sound of fury and confusion. Gasped, chest burning, vision blurred. Every breath was agony, every heartbeat a drum of pain, but he stayed upright. He had to. A sudden explosion rocked the chamber. Part of the ceiling collapsed, showering debris around them. Though was momentarily blinded, seized the opportunity. He kicked forward, slamming the creature into the wall. Metal screeched. Sparks flew. The impact staggered the monster. He looked around. Reinforcements had arrived. Soldiers poured into the chamber, their energy weapons blazing. The snarled, retreating slightly, then lunged at one last time. He didn't flinch. Every move, every breath, every ounce of strength he had left was fueled by one thing, the life of the princess. Lyra's face flashed in his mind, storm-blue eyes, trembling hands, trust and fear mingling. She was alive. She deserved a chance at life, love, a future free from this nightmare. The creature's final strike came, a claw aimed directly at his chest. Met it head-on, raising the jagged metal shard like a shield. Pain exploded through his body, bones cracking, ribs screaming, blood spilling freely. But he held. Human will was stronger than steel, stronger than instinct, stronger than fear. The recoiled, unprepared for such resilience from something so small, so fragile. Gritted his teeth, every muscle screamed. "You don't know humans," he rasped. "We fight for each other." The creature paused, tilting its massive head. Its molten eyes flickered and for the first time sensed hesitation. The warriors advanced. Energy beams struck the monster's armor, finally forcing it to retreat. Bloodied and broken, fell to his knees. Pain radiated through his entire body, but he smiled. Lyra's voice crackled through the chamber speakers. "Are you?" "I'm alive," he whispered, choking on blood. "Humans are stubborn." Her laugh, shaky and breathless, filled the chamber. Relief, joy, and disbelief all tangled together. "I thought I'd lost you," she whispered. "You didn't," he managed. "You're safe, that's all that matters." A soldier helped him to his feet. Every step sent bolts of pain through his body, but he didn't care. He had done what he set out to do. He had taken the hit, faced the impossible, and survived, not for glory, not for recognition, but because that's what humans did. They fought for others, they protected, they endured. And sometimes they did the impossible. Looked toward Lyra, her silver skin glowing faintly, her storm blue eyes wide and bright. She reached out, taking his bloodied hand in hers. The warmth of her touch made him forget the pain, if only for a moment. "I owe you my life," she said softly. "No," he whispered. "You owe it to yourself for surviving, for living. That's all the thanks I need." Behind them, they had retreated into the shadows. The ship groaned under the damage, but the Kiev was safe. The princess was alive, and one fragile human had reminded the galaxy that courage, determination, and the human spirit could shine even in the darkest corners of space. Slumped against the wall, exhausted, broken, but smiling, he had faced death and stared it down, human against impossible odds, and he had won in the only way that mattered. She lived. The ship shuddered one final time. Alarms still wailed, hull breaches hissed, and the distant echoes of explosions rattled through the corridors. But the immediate danger had passed. They had retreated into the shadows, wounded and confused, leaving the human and the princess alive. Hale leaned heavily against the wall, blood dripping from multiple wounds. Every breath was agony, every heartbeat a reminder of how close he had come to death. Yet somehow, a faint smile lingered on his lips. He had survived. Against impossible odds, he had stood firm. He had protected her. Lyra approached, her silver armor scratched and scorched, yet untouched in spirit. She knelt beside him, placing her hand gently on his bloodied chest. Her storm blue eyes glistened, reflecting both relief and awe. You did it," she whispered. Her voice trembled, breaking the weight of silence that had settled after the battle. "I didn't think anyone could stand up to that thing." Coughed, blood trickling down his chin, he attempted a weak grin. "Humans have a funny way of surprising things much bigger than themselves," he rasped. "We fight, we endure, we protect, even when it seems impossible." Lyra's hand stayed on his chest, lingering, trembling. "You risked everything for me, for my life, for the key," her voice cracked. "Why?" His eyes met hers. Pain, blood, and exhaustion clouded his vision, but his answer was simple, honest. "Because it was the right thing to do, because someone had to, because I couldn't let you die." Her breath caught, tears rolled down her cheeks, and she didn't hide them. Instead, she let them fall freely, glimmering like starlight in the flickering emergency lights. "You're human," she said softly, as if tasting the word. "Fragile, mortal, and yet stronger than anyone I've ever known." For a moment, the chaos around them faded. The distant alarms, the shuddering hull, the lingering smoke, they all became irrelevant. The two of them existed in a small bubble of calm, a shared heartbeat in a galaxy of turmoil. Then a commander approached, flanked by soldiers. "Princess Lyra," he said formally, bowing slightly. "The key is secure, the enemy has been repelled, and this human," he glanced at, nodding the blood, the battered body, the defiance still burning in his eyes. "He has proven exceptional." Lyra squeezed his hand gently, refusing to let go. "Exceptional is not the word," she said quietly. "Heroic, selfless, human." She leaned closer, her forehead resting against his, sharing warmth in the cold, wrecked chamber. "I owe you everything." Laughed weakly, a sound hoarse but full of genuine humor despite the pain. "You don't owe me anything," he whispered. "Humans, we fight for each other. For those who can't, for those who matter. You mattered. That was enough." Lyra's eyes softened, a storm giving way to calm seas. "And yet," she murmured, "without you the galaxy might have fallen tonight. Without you, I would be gone." He shook his head, a pained, shaky motion. "Then let's say, humans are stubborn, we take hits, we survive, and sometimes we inspire hope." A small laugh escaped her, light and trembling, and she leaned in, pressing her lips to his cheek. Not a kiss of romance yet, but a promise, a connection, a gratitude that transcended words. His heart swelled despite every broken bone and bleeding wound. The truth was simple. Humans might be fragile, mortal, ordinary, but when faced with impossible odds, they could achieve the extraordinary. They could shield someone they loved, even across galaxies. As the emergency lights stabilized, the crew began clearing the wreckage, and the distant sounds of retreating enemies faded, allowed himself to relax slightly. Lyra stayed by his side, helping him to lean against the wall, guiding him as the chaos slowly transformed into order. "Humans," she whispered again, shaking her head slightly in awe, "you truly are remarkable." Smiled faintly. "And we don't even need armor that glows," he muttered. "Just a reason to keep going." Lyra pressed her hand over his, her eyes locking with his, and for the first time she didn't see a fragile human beside her. She saw courage, determination, love, and heroism all in one person. The stars beyond the broken hull shone like silent witnesses to the story that had just unfolded. A human had taken the hit. A princess had survived. And across the galaxies, word of the deed would ripple, an echo of what humans could do when heart, courage, and love drove them to defy fate. Closed his eyes, exhausted but triumphant. The galaxy had witnessed the impossible tonight, and it would never forget the man who had stood, human and mortal, against a monster, and taken the hit so that the princess could live. Because that was what humans did. They fought, they endured, they inspired. They protected. They were heroes.